Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. My name is Justin D'Souza. I'm a statistician at Statistics Solutions. During today's webinar, we are going to look at SPSS data cleaning and management. I'm going to go through the entire presentation first, and then I will do a Q&A session at the end. So if you have any questions, you can type them into the chat box or the Q&A box. My colleague Sierra is going to put some hyperlinks in the chat box as well for scheduling free consultations and checking out our free dissertation resources. So let's go ahead and dive in, and we'll send everyone a copy of the PowerPoint and the webinar as well. All right, so for today's webinar, we are looking at cleaning data in SPSS. First, I'll give a brief overview of the services we provide at our company. Then we'll look at some examples in SPSS. We'll conclude with a summary and a Q&A session. So on this slide, you can see all the various parts of the dissertation journey that we assist with. Our company has methodologists, we have literature review specialists, and we can also assist with APA editing. So no matter where you are, if you need help framing research questions, pinpointing a gap in the literature, framing your purpose and problem statements, and really fine-tuning parts of the methodology, we can help you there. We also assist with uploading surveys onto SurveyMonkey or Qualtrics. And then we can also assist with the results chapter. If you just send us your data along with your methodology and the scoring instructions for your surveys, we can write up a results chapter for you. And then we can conclude with the discussion, PowerPoints for both proposal and final defenses and journal publications. If you have any questions, you can give us a call at 727-442-4290. And on this slide, you can view the past recordings of webinars we've done at the webinar archive, and you can see what's on the horizon for future webinars with the top link here. All right, so first we're looking at uploading data into SPSS. What are the first things you should look at? And the first thing you want to do is you want to add an ID variable so you can keep track of all your participants. This can be useful because you might be sorting your data in different orders. If you're trying to identify non-responses or outliers, you might need to sort columns in a different order. And by having this ID variable, you can just sort the data into its original order. Then you want to name every variable of interest in your spreadsheet. So you want to use a short phrase that summarizes what the instrument is, and then just put what number you're using to measure. So for example, job satisfaction 1, job satisfaction 2, and so forth. And what's really crucial is saving your spreadsheet after every major adjustment. I would even recommend minor adjustments. If you're changing the sample size, if you're changing variables from string to numeric, recoding, things like that, you want to save after each step. That way you can revert back to an older spreadsheet if you need to. So let's look at an example here. We can start the first few steps. Here is a survey that was administered on SurveyMonkey, and I extracted the data into SPSS format. And this is what we have. I have not touched the spreadsheet at all. So SurveyMonkey will give you some introductory information about when the survey was taken, when was it completed, what was the IP address of your participants. And then this is where the survey really starts, right here. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is kind of eyeball the spreadsheet. Do we have missing responses? What is the format of the data? Is it numeric? Is it written out in words? We can see a combination of both. We have numbers here. We also have words. So things like Likert scales, things like a strongly disagree to a strongly agree scale, most likely need to be shifted to numbers. So we can take a look at that. The first step is adding an ID column. So if we right click here and then insert a variable to the left, let's call this ID. Then we can go into Excel. Surprisingly, there's not a fast way to do this in SPSS. But you look at how many people you have. We have a sample size of 91 cases. So if we start the list here and then just autofill it down to 91 and then paste it here. So now we can keep track of all the people. So for instance, if I sort a different column in ascending order, you can see the IDs are now all jumbled. But if I want to revert back to the original spreadsheet order, I just sort this column in ascending order and we're back to normal. All right, so that's step one. Step two is naming the variables of interest in your spreadsheet. So that's pretty easy to do. You can see the questions right here in variable view. First question was a demographic, years of experience or years of service. Then we had a Likert scale question right here for job satisfaction, 7 items. We have 6 items here. This is leadership effectiveness, the first 7. Then this is job satisfaction. And then this is organizational commitment. Okay, so similar to how we did the IDs, you can quickly autofill variable names in Excel. We'll do leader effectiveness. Have to do the first 2 manually, and then you can autofill the rest. Have 7 items there. Have job satisfaction next. And we have 5 items for this one, 6 items. And then we have organizational commitment. And for this one, we have 5 items. All right, so now that we have the variable names ready, we just need to copy and paste them here. All right, good to go. So the next step is saving the spreadsheet. All right, so create a folder. I just have the first spreadsheet here was called sample data. So make sure you're saving in the same folder repeatedly. Now I would say sample data, we had a sample of 91. So I would put n equals 91, and I would put today's date. And then you can also describe what happened in this procedure. So naming variables and added ID. All right. So those are the first few steps. Next, you want to recode any Likert scale data from string format, if it is written out in words, into numbers. And then you want to identify if you need to reverse code. This is not going to apply to the spreadsheet today, but with any survey that you use that is previously validated, you want to look for scoring instructions because you want to make sure that you are creating your variable accurately. Usually you take a mean of items or you take a sum, but there might be questions that are negatively phrased on your survey that need to be flipped. The Likert scale needs to be flipped. So you have to be very aware of that step if you need to do it. So we had 3 Likert scale surveys. We had leader effectiveness, we had job satisfaction, and organizational commitment. These ones are good to go. All right, these are already in numeric format. We just need to change these ones, organizational commitment, from string to numbers. So to do that, we'll go to transform and then recode into same variables. And then we can move all of these to the right box here, organizational commitment. Then the idea here is that we put what the current value is, such as strongly disagree, into this box. And then in this box, we put the number that it should represent, which would be a 1 in this case. So a quick way to do this is just to copy directly from the spreadsheet. So copying strongly disagree, putting old and new values, pasting that here, and this should be a 1. And then we'll click add, and then continue, and then just rinse and repeat. Disagree will be next, paste disagree, that's a 2. Neither is going to be the neutral response, which is a 3. Then we have agree, 4. And we have strongly agree, which is a 5. Okay, with any analyses in SPSS, you can click OK, and it is going to run that function. So if I click OK now, it's going to change all of these to numbers. But you should get in the habit of clicking paste as well. If you click paste, that is going to open what is called a syntax file. I actually don't see where that is opening right now. I think it's on my second monitor. But if you do use syntax, syntax will allow you to keep a running record of everything you're doing, which is quite useful. Okay, so get in the habit of clicking paste as well. Thing. All right, so let's go ahead and run that function here. If we click OK here, we'll see all the numbers appear now. And there's one more step you have to make. You can see that there's a little A character here. That means that SPSS still thinks that it is a string variable. We need to change it to numeric like the other ones. So just change it to numeric right here. And then you can copy and paste it down for the rest. All right. So now we can save again. Change from string to numeric. The next step is looking at missing responses. There are many ways to handle missing responses. This is really something you should check with your committee, your methodologist, or your chair. They might have a preference for what method you use. You can use mean imputation or mean replacement or median replacement. You can also use predictive imputation. You can consider removing non-responses altogether. There's literature to support almost every method. So what I tend to do is I follow this method here. If you're way above your sample size requirement, then you have room for error in which you can just eliminate non-responses. Okay, so we'll kind of do a combination here. We eyeballed the spreadsheet at the beginning, and you can see that some people did not respond to anything after the initial demographic question for experience. Because they don't have any Likert scale responses, I would just delete this person altogether. But we do have some unique cases where, like this person right here, did not respond to only one item on the survey, same as this person here. You don't want to eliminate people if they just fail to respond to a few items. So there's different methods we can use. So let's take care of these ones first, the people who did not respond to anything. And a quick way to do that is just to pick any column here and sort it in ascending order. That is going to bring the non-responses to the top, like this. And then we can just delete these cases. Okay. You should also have a running record of the non-responses. Okay, so open up a Word document and just jot down any notes. So we had n equals 91 for the initial sample size. And we can do some bullet points here. So we have 5 non-responses. This really should be the final sample size. Right here, 86. We're not going to eliminate anybody else. We're not going to take these cases out together. So let's save a new copy here. It's now 86 for the sample size, and we eliminated non-responses. Now, for these cases here, we can swap these values with the average of each column. Okay. You can take the average or you can take the median. I've even seen the mode is used. You'll have to see with your committee if they have a preference. But to do this, you'll go to transform and replace missing values. We can just shift everything to the right box here. First, we have to select a method. Okay, so we need to do a mean of all points. That is the most common procedure I see used. Move all the variables to the right box here, and then click OK. All right, so what this is going to do is it's going to create a copy of every variable of interest. You'll have one version that has the missing value, and then another version that has no missing values. So for instance here, job satisfaction 3 was missing a cell right here. So that was the 8th participant. Scroll to the right here, job satisfaction 3. You can see the mean has been used to replace that missing value, 2.15. All right, so you can see that we have copies of every variable. Leader effectiveness 1, this is the original, where it has an underscore 1. That is where the mean replacement has happened. All right, so let's just copy all the variable labels here and shift them down here. And you can decide whether to keep the original variables in or not. Sometimes that is advisable, but for the webinar today, to avoid confusion, I'm just going to delete these ones here. I'm going to delete the originals just so we have the mean replaced ones. Leader effectiveness 1 to organizational commitment 5, clear. All right, so we're good to go. And then we can save again. Replace missing values, mean. The next step is creating composite scores. So what I mentioned earlier, where you need to look at your scoring instructions for each instrument. If it's previously validated, this is especially important. You need to follow the instructions very closely. If you need to reverse code items, if you need to use a mean or a sum of the respective items. And then you can also identify if there are any outliers. First, let's create the composite score. And for each of these previously validated instruments, each of the 3, the scoring instructions say to take an average of every item. So to do that, we'll go to transform and compute variable. And we'll call it leader effectiveness overall. I'll just put mean to be specific. Taking a mean of every item. So to do this, you put the function that you want to run, which is a mean, and then select item 1. You can do this a couple different ways. You can input every item one by one by using a comma, item 2, comma, item 3, comma. But a faster way, if the spreadsheet is in order, is to just select the first item and write the word 2, and then select the final item. So this function is going to take a mean or an average of leadership effectiveness 1 up to leadership effectiveness 7. So it's going to take an average across all 7 of those items. Okay. And you can see that variable's here now. So everybody has a leadership effectiveness score. All right, and then we need to do the other 2. We have job satisfaction next. Job satisfaction mean. First item to last item. And then finally, organizational commitment. All right, so the three variables are here now. Then the next step is identifying if there are outliers. This is another step that has many different methods to check. You can visually assess for outliers if you look at box plots and potentially even scatter plots, but you can numerically check for it using the citation here. So if we convert all of the scores to z-scores or standardized values, we can use this threshold to identify if we have any extremely high values or any extremely low values. All right, to do this, very simple. We'll go to Analyze, Descriptive Statistics, and Descriptives. Put in these three variables here, the composite scores that we created. And then we need to check mark this box right here, save standardized values as variables. So standardizing a variable just means you're standardizing it around the mean. You're shifting the scores down so they are relative to the mean. So then you can see those here. We have the original leadership effectiveness, and then we have the z-score for leadership effectiveness. Likewise for the other two factors. And using the citation, Tabachnik and Fidel, a very common reference that I see used, they indicate that if z-scores are larger than 3.29 or if they are below negative 3.29, those cases are potentially outliers and they may need to be removed. Okay, so all you have to do is sort these columns in ascending and descending order. We'll start with leader effectiveness, sort in ascending order. So the lowest z-score is negative 0.97. Negative 0.97 does not go below negative 3.29. So we don't have any low outliers. Then we sort it in descending order. So we'll see the high z-scores first. And the highest is 2.79. So 2.79 does not go beyond 3.29. We don't have any outliers for leader effectiveness. Then you do the same procedure here. So for job satisfaction, negative 1.29 and 2.67. And then organizational commitment, negative 1.92 and 1.32. So we don't have any outliers in the spreadsheet. So no further adjustments need to be made in terms of reductions. So let's save the spreadsheet here. And here we created composite scores and checked for outliers. And that's pretty much it. You can also test, once you're at this step, the next step is addressing your research questions. Okay, so maybe if you had a demographic questionnaire, looking at descriptives to summarize gender, age, ethnicity, education level, things like that, and using means and standard deviations to summarize your variables of interest. So both of those are fairly simple. There's only one demographic question here for experience. So for something like that, you can just do a frequency distribution. If you go to Analyze, Descriptives, and Frequencies, and we'll put in years of service right here, click OK. And that is going to run, I don't know why I need to restart SPSS, but just running frequencies on demographics and then means and standard deviations for your variables of interest. Job satisfaction, leader effectiveness, organizational commitment. And then the next step is testing for assumptions. Okay, so this is diving into your research questions. You need to know what analysis you're planning to run, if it's correlations, t-tests, ANOVAs, regressions. And then you can check out this website here. If you go to statistics layered, and we'll put in a random test here. Say we're doing an independent t-test. This website, I'll put it in the chat box as well. This website will give you a good breakdown on what a particular test is, how it needs to be set up in SPSS, but it also gives a list of all the assumptions that you should check. So for a t-test, there are 6 assumptions that you should verify before running that t-test. That is quite useful. And then once you check for assumptions, you'll want to address your research question with the particular analysis that you have selected. All right. Do we have any questions? I do see we have a couple. If you have any questions, you can type them into the chat box or the Q&A box, and we'll send everyone a copy of the PowerPoint and the webinar. All right, we have a question from Blanca. Let me put these questions in a Word document so everybody can read them. Okay, here's the first question. Is there an option available as an alternative to SPSS to practice on free for cost? I'm interested in practicing the concept of analyzing data and likely scale input. For one thing, I would check with your school to see if they have SPSS included in their software programs. A lot of universities have it included. They have a university membership where it's free to use. If it's not free, then with your EDU account, you should be able to get a discount. It's usually quite expensive, but with the discount, it's much cheaper. There are other software you can use. You can use Stata, you can use SAS, you can use R, but every software is a little bit different. So if you're trying to practice in SPSS, I don't know if there's a better software than SPSS. You'll most likely want to look for a reduced price. And that should be readily available given that you're a student. All right, we have a question from Francis. Is there a certificate for this webinar? We do not provide certification for these webinars, unfortunately. And we do have another comment recommending other students. Thank you so much. We would definitely appreciate that. Do we have any other questions? Any questions about cleaning data in SPSS or maybe some general methodological questions? All right, we have a question from Daphne. Is there another webinar on violated assumptions? Over the last couple months, I've been doing webinars on specific tests. So if you go to our company website here, Statistics Solutions, and then you go to webinars, and we'll go to the webinar archive here. It depends what test you're doing. Sometimes I went through violations of assumptions. It depends what test. Conducting t-tests, I may have shown backup approaches to use if normality was not supported or homogeneity of variance is not supported. You can shift to non-parametric tests. You can use your sample size to justify proceeding. If you have a really large sample, you can use your sample size to proceed despite violations of assumptions. Here we looked at tests of differences. I may have gone through non-parametrics in that case, backups if the assumptions were not supported, correlations as well. I definitely went through non-parametrics in this one. So we looked at Pearson correlations, and if normality is not supported, Spearman correlations were run instead. So you can check out the different presentations we have. In some cases, I did go through backups. We have a question from Tammy. Is there another webinar on performing time series analysis? We have not done a webinar in time series just yet, but that may be on the horizon. All right, we have a question from an anonymous attendee. What does a VE mean? Actually don't know. You might have to clarify this comment a little bit more for me. I'm putting it in the Word document here. I don't know exactly what you're referring to here. What does the VE mean difference? Baseline mean? I think I would need a little more context. Oh, a negative. That's what, okay. What does a negative mean difference at baseline mean? Does to do a difference, you need to have two different points in time. So I don't see how you could have a negative difference at baseline alone. I'm assuming it would have to be if you're just doing a baseline and a post test, it would be post test minus baseline like that, right? So if you have a negative value for that, then that means your baseline was larger than your post test, right? So say post test was a 10, baseline was a 5, then you're going to have a positive value. But if post test was a 8 and the baseline was a 10, you're going to have a -2. So to do a mean difference, you need to do subtraction between 2 points in time. So if you have a negative value, that means that one of your time periods, it depends how you do the subtraction. But if you do post test minus baseline, then that means that your baseline was higher than your post test. All right. Hopefully that makes sense. I don't know if I explained that well. Maybe you can clarify the negative mean difference for me. All right. Do we have any other questions? All right. Well, thanks for joining, everyone. Come join us for future webinars. We'll send a copy of the webinar and the PowerPoint, and let us know if you have any questions. Have a great evening. Take care.